All righty, here we go. It is a brand new Flyers Daily for the 9th of May, 2025. First of all, Mother's Day on Sunday. So happy Mother's Day to all the great moms out there. You deserve a great day. That's first and foremost. This episode, we're going to get to some emails about the episode the other day about optimism. We're going to get to some YouTube comments as well. I have some things I'd like to say about those. Some I agree with, some I don't. And just tell you that coming up on Monday, it'll be a Monday with Meltzer edition as we eke closer and closer to the Flyers naming a coach. Who's that going to be? I don't know when they're going to name a coach. I don't rush it because I don't think it's a decision you have to rush. Yes, there have been two coaches hired, Joel Quenneville, hired by the Anaheim Ducks, and Mike Sullivan by the New York Rangers. Yes. But I don't think the Flyers were in pursuit of either of those. I think Sullivan knew exactly where he was going before he got fired. Very close relationship with Rangers GM Chris Drury. And so only certain teams would even consider Mike Babcock. Anaheim, obviously, considered it. And he will be their head coach to coach Cutter Gauthier and the Ducks moving forward. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see what kind of backlash comes from that, from the Kyle Beach situation as well. I was reading some of the comments from Anaheim's announcement that they hired him, and he's a great coach, but there is some baggage there for obvious reasons. But let's get to the emails and the comment section right out of the gate. And I want to start out with this one email. It's an interesting read. It comes from a guy named Robert. I won't put out his last name, but he's, hi Jason. I don't think I've ever disagreed with you on a show more than I do today. And I see the point in everything that you're saying. And what you're saying may be factually correct, but you're looking at these situations with the lottery and needing top 5 picks completely wrong, in my opinion. He said, I want to preface this first point by saying that I'm also against tanking from the beginning. So starting the season with the mentality of trying to lose. And he said, and as much as I would love Gavin McKenna, can't justify wasting another young player to barely have a chance at winning in the lottery. Again, the best chance you get with the worst record in the league is 25% chance. He said, yes, winning the lottery is the main goal, but it's not the only reason we want the team to lose. He said, the second the team gets eliminated from the playoffs, there's no point to the season. We'll go back to this, but I disagree. He said, so I do want us to start losing, not for the first pick. So we have to, but so the team has a guaranteed higher first pick. Falling 2 spots is terrible, but falling to 6 is way better than falling out of the top 10 if we would have been 9, for example. You've made the point about the 2017 draft, how we had the top 5 pick, top 2, and messed it up with Nolan Patrick. And there are other players drafted later that did well. Obviously, the draft is a crapshoot. You can find players anywhere and flops as early as the number 1 pick, which we've seen with guys like Nail Yakupov or many others through the years. 4 of the top 5 are in the top 5. And after the 5th pick, it gets random and sporadic. The higher the pick, the higher the likelihood to get a better pick. Absolutely. Does that mean we should tank from the start of the season to try and get that? No. But are people wrong for wanting the team to lose when they are close to clinching that top 5 pick? No. We'll get into all this. I just want to finish his email. He said, then the point about teams with many top 5 picks. Let's first react to what he said initially here, first of all. He said, the second the team gets eliminated from the playoffs, there's no point to the season. Totally disagree. You still, even though the games aren't leading to either a playoff spot or an elimination later on, those games still mean something, especially for young players. You want to tell young players that get their first couple of NHL games, like Carson Dort, that those games meant nothing and it'd have been better if they lost in his debut? I just don't believe that. To me, that's very cynical. Games, no matter when they're played, they mean more when you're still in the mix, but games after you're eliminated still mean something. Players can still get something out of them. To say they mean nothing, you might as well just mail it in, is not understanding the essence of a hockey player. Do you think a hockey player goes, okay, we're out of it. These games now don't mean anything except better draft position, so I should just mail it in? And I know you're not talking about the players, but you're talking about as a fan. I get it too as a fan. At the end of the season, as they were winning games when Bradshaw was named the head coach, or as they were, the last game in particular. You're watching them battle it out with Columbus. And I'm going, do you really want to win this game? Do you really want to keep pushing the envelope here? Because the draft position will be better if you lose this game. I get conflicted on that as well. But to say that the moment they're eliminated, what if they're eliminated in January 30th because they're having a really bad year? Do the rest of those games just mean nothing? They mean something. They also mean something to draft position. You are correct. And the higher the draft position, obviously, the better, the more you have for the taking, the more players you have available at the top of the draft that you can possibly draft. And obviously, you got to make the right decision. You got to develop, blah, 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 on down the line. Let's get to the rest of your email. I said the point about teams with many top 5 picks not winning, I said I'm looking at it backwards. There are way more chances for teams to get top 5 picks than teams to win. The stat you should be looking at is Stanley Cup teams with top 5 picks. That shows more of what's needed to win. Since the lockout, only one team has won the Stanley Cup without a top 5 pick, and that was the Red Wings. You look at teams, the teams that actually picked in the top 5 and won the Cup, that's not true. Because you look at team like Florida, for example, they did pick inside the top 5. They got Aaron Ekblad number 1 overall. But they acquired other players that were picked in the top 5, like Sam Bennett, which shows that you can go out and get players that were picked at the top of the draft that can help you win a cup via the trade market. The Red Wings is the team he mentions. Every other team has at least one top 5 pick, and most have 2 or 3. Does having a top 5 pick guarantee you win? No. But do you need them to win? In the past 20 years, almost always. Yeah, but there's other ways to get that top 5 pick via trade, as we've seen. We've even seen it recently. I mean, Sam Bennett wasn't traded that long ago, but Jack Eichel was traded to Las Vegas, number 2 overall pick. We see these guys moving. Said, sorry for the long message. Keep up the good work, and your health is in my prayers. So, okay, let's look at it. So let's use Florida because they're a recent winner. And for this kind of conversation, we should probably separate the pre-salary cap era from the now salary cap era, which came about in 2005, 2006. So, because it's not just apples to apples, apples to oranges. It's apples to tennis rackets when you talk pre-cap and now a hard cap system. Florida won the Cup in 2024. Florida, so that team, if you look back for Florida, is in essence built with players drafted at least north of 2010, right? So we'll look at 2010. Florida had a top pick in the a 3rd overall pick in the 2010 draft. That pick was Erica Branson. Okay? So when you look at Erica Branson, played 805 games. When you look at Erica Branson, played this year for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So not a factor, but they did pick in the top 5. But he obviously didn't help them. 2010 or 2011, excuse me, they picked 3rd overall. Did the Florida Panthers. They picked Jonathan Huberdeau, who is now a member of the Calgary Flames. But that is part of the Matthew Tkachuk trade, who was taken 6th overall. Okay, let's go back and look again. So 2011, that was Huberdeau, no longer there, but Tkachuk's the return, even though he was taken outside the top 5. 12, no top 5 pick. In 2013, they had the 2nd overall pick in that draft in 2013. And in the 2013 NHL entry draft, at 3rd overall, they took Jonathan Drouin. No longer there. Okay. 2014, they didn't have a top 5 pick. They didn't have a top 5 pick in 15, in 16, in 17. They had the number 1 overall pick in Florida in 2014. That was in Philadelphia when they drafted Aaron Ekblad, who is still there. 17 didn't have a top 5 pick. 18 didn't have a top 5 pick. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, they didn't have a top 5 pick. So, again, they had a bunch of top 5 picks, but they're not even there for Florida. Okay, let's look at another team that won multiple cups. Let's take the 04 Cup out of it because that's pre-salary cap for Tampa Bay. They won the Cup in 2020 and 2021. So we'll go back a couple of years. We'll even go back to Stamkos because he was the number 1 overall pick in 2008. He was drafted in 2008. They didn't win a Cup until 12 years later. So 2008, they picked Stamkos. 2009, they have a 2nd overall pick, and they picked Victor Hedman. Obviously, 2 big pieces of their Cup-winning teams. But those teams didn't really win anything until they did. By the way, they had a top 5 pick in 2013 as well, and they took Jonathan Drouin there. I said Drouin was picked by Florida. No, that was Barkov. That was picked 2nd overall by Florida. Drouin is no longer with Tampa Bay. They traded him for Sergachev. And really, the Tampa Bay Lightning, in combination with Stamkos and Hedman, you can't minimize that. And obviously, the drafting of Vasilevsky, which was well outside the top 5. Really, the reason why they became a Cup team is because they found Nikita Kucherov in the 2nd round and Braden Point in the 3rd round. Then they surrounded them with great players like Palat and Cirelli and all the pieces. And obviously, you had the goaltending as well. So, okay, they had 2 players that were taken in the top 10 in the top 5 rather, in Stamkos and Hedman, made a big difference. So that's a team. 2019, St. Louis won the Cup, and St. Louis had a number 1 overall pick. They took Eric Johnson, former Flyer. That was in 2000, I want to say 2006, was it? I think so. It's a long time ago, but they won the Cup in 2019, and there's just not any top 5 picks there. They had a top 5 pick in 2006, and they had a top 5 pick. I'm trying to even find the other top 5 pick and who it was. They built their team kind of via the trade, and Pietrangelo and Binnington coming up, and trading for Shen and all of that stuff. This isn't a team that was built at the top of the draft. The Vegas Golden Knights, you can't even really go into that. They were the 2023 Cup winner. They basically don't even have a 1st-round pick that they drafted playing for their team. So, again, okay, you want to go to Chicago. This is post. Yeah, they had Kane. Yeah, they had Taves. They had some guys at the top. But the notion that, again, all these teams that win the Cup did it with top 5 picks, it's just not true. The numbers don't belie it. All right, let's get to this email from Ian. He says, hey, Jason, hope you're doing well on this Wednesday evening, and I hope you're having get good news with your scans. We're all thinking of you, and they're with you. So I had the scans on Wednesday. I have not seen the results yet. I do have a doctor's appointment this morning, bright and early, on Friday, with a radiation oncologist. I did peek at the MRI results, but I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I'm reading. I'm hoping that the chemo treatments are going to be very effective. And I'll have to continue on with my treatment. I know that. But hoping for what the chemo's intent was to shrink and make it more manageable. Ian goes on to say, like most of us Flyers fans, I'm disappointed with the lack of draft lottery luck. I still believe we can get a good player at 6. I have faith in Danny in the front office to make the right decision, whatever that might be. But I wanted to say in response to your question in today's pod is that I'm optimistic about a few things with the Flyers. Mishkov, top of the list. He's the real deal and looks to be a superstar in the making. And as much as it sucks that he didn't win the caller or get nominated as a finalist, I think he'll use that as motivation for next season. Plus a full summer to training, get ready for next year will be huge for him, and I can't wait. Totally agree. I think Mishkov will use that as motivation. I think being in the league this year taught him a lot of things about how to prepare the body and mind and all that stuff, and things to work on. I think next year is going to be a big step for him. Ian also said, I'm optimistic about some of the kids at Lehigh. This playoff run they're on is great, and I'd love it to culminate in a Calder Cup. Lachenko's been making plays, Grabankin as well, and I can't wait to see them compete for roster spots next year. Put Bump in that mix also. Mil Andre's down there playing. Further they go, the better it is. They're up 2-1 in the series. 2-1 against Hershey. They will be back at it on Friday, today, in Lehigh to take on the Hershey Bears. Best of luck to them and to Ian LaPerriere. He said, I'm also optimistic about the Flyers and the idea of them being able to bring in some free agents. I think with Torts being gone, I hate to even say this, that it will be much easier to attract free agents besides the money aspect, of course. I keep going back to what Jonesy said about not wanting the best available player, but they want the best player. And I catch myself daydreaming about some extremely unlikely scenarios, but who knows what will happen. Flyers are a first-class organization with first-class facilities. Travel isn't bad on the players being on the East Coast, and we do have a diehard fan base. So a couple of things. I don't think there'll be huge players in free agency this offseason. Yes, they have money, but you have to also look at I don't think they're going out there to make some kind of big splash. I think some people convince themselves that there's going to be a big splash this summer. No, I think they're going to improve the team this summer. And there will be some additions and there will be some changes. But I don't think it's this monumental jump. Like when Danny Briere came here in his first year as a player, they had the worst season in Flyers history, and they came back the next year and went to a conference final. I don't think it's anything like that. I think you have to look and see what Gurbenkin is. You have to look and see, is Jetlachenko make the team, or does it make more sense to send him back to Guelph? I'm not really in favor of that. You know, Emil Andres, is he an everyday NHL defenseman and at the disposal of who? Is that a guy like Zamula? How do you upgrade these positions and not block? There's some interesting questions they have to answer this offseason. I'd like to see Lehigh Valley go on that run as well. And I don't think it's going to be a big free agent summer. I think they'll sign a free agent, but I don't think this is the one where you're going, that's the best player or best player available. I just don't think it's the time that they're going to do that. All right, let's get to some YouTube comments from the episode the other day. Let's start right at the top. Triune Worshipper says, I hope you're doing well. You're looking great, and I wish you and pray for the best. You're a strong man, regardless of any outcome of any scan. Get up every day. Keep marching forward is the greatest any person can do. Thank you. I appreciate it. A lot of people sending in their good vibes, and that's why I was looking for optimism. I didn't want to go into my scans with all these negative thoughts pervading my brain. I wanted to go in there with an optimistic look, not on just my scans and my health situation, but on all of the things that are in my life. So that was one of the reasons why I did the episode that I did. Frankly, I didn't plan that. In hindsight, I realized that sometimes that's how things work. Mike said, I'm optimistic about the team we have been building. The younger guys continuing to grow, the leadership group building with more players stepping up. Great things are coming. And I trust Danny and Keith Jones to bring great things for the organization. Steven says, keep fighting, Jason. You look great. As far as the Flyers, I can't do another tear it down season. It's been 5 years since the Flyers made the playoffs, and it feels like an eternity. I totally agree with you. It's time to get this ship going in the right direction. Danny Briere needs to make some good additions to the roster, either by trades or signing a free agent, and we have to keep drafting well also. Pumpkin King, one of my negativity guys, he said, I wasn't surprised or disappointed with the lottery. This is the Flyers. Always expect the worst possible outcome. Dude, how do you wake up every day with just expecting the anvil that's swinging over your head to the rope to snap and land on you every day? Like, how do you do that, Pumpkin King? The Flyers for decades, up until 2012, were a team that were in it all the time. Again, the last 13 years since 2012, 2013, they've been their own worst enemy and haven't gotten it right. He said both San Jose and Chicago got another top 5 pick. So here's why the lottery is BS. The Flyers had more odds to move back than move up. And I totally agree with you. You finish 4th, you have the best odds to land in the 5th position. That seems like odd math to me. Here's the nightmare summer of the Flyers. They hire Tuckett, they sign Sam Bennett, they sign an old goalie, hang the banner, rebuild over, well-run, competent organization, create their own luck. Best of luck with your scans. Yeah, I mean, look, good organizations, no matter where they draft, they find a way to get it done. They do. And you have to find talent outside the top 5. And you have to be able to supplement top talent. The Mr. Twitzer says, the scar tissue you speak of causing all the negativity, at least on my end, isn't recent. He said, I lived through the Lindros injuries, never having a goalie, missing out on the first overall pick to get JVR in a miserable season, heart situation, Oscar Lindblom's cancer diagnosis, Pronger's eye injury, Kane scoring the Cup winner at home in the dumbest way possible, and so on. Just feels like we can't catch a break. I think what they're doing now is the right way to go, and we did get a bit of luck with Michkov, so we shall see. Yeah, I get it. Like, I totally agree with you. I lived through all those things too. So many what ifs in the 6 cup finals they went to since they won the cup in 75. Somebody else also chimed in, said Pelly Lindbergh. Yeah, him passing away. That was another one. Yeah, just look, circumstance is part of it. It's hard to win a cup in today's game. I think some fans, yeah, they haven't won a cup since 75, though. What? It's hard to win. The Leafs, nobody calls them a loser organization around here. They haven't won a cup since the league expanded beyond 6 teams. They haven't won since 67, but they're good right now. They might win it this year. So we'll see. David said Gary Bettman and Mr. Snyder were good friends. Yeah, the notion that the league is against the Flyers is completely ridiculous. Joe Pildert says it seemed like for a number of years, every prospect was getting injured. Sam Moran's knees. German Rupsev was always hurt. LeBear's got his head destroyed. O'Brien had issues in his draft plus 1 year. Even Frost and Farabee missed pivotal development time. The effect of D+1 and D+2 injuries would be a cool discussion at some point with development coaches. Absolutely. You know, Morgan Frost was a guy that had to go through the pandemic with his development. And then, remember, he hurt his shoulder. He had some injuries where he missed key time. But at some point, you got to just look at it and you got to say, you got to deal with it. And you either develop or you don't. Flyers decided it was time to move on. Eric says, I'm optimistic about the Flyers' depth next year. They have 4 prospects that can compete for roster spots. Thinking more subtractions are coming. Yeah, there's going to have to be people going out to make room for people coming in. So we'll see how that played or how that plays out when we get to training camp and all that. Mark says there's only 2 ways to get a high draft pick, either tank or play in the New York metropolitan area. All right. August Drum says, which is why tanking is a stupid strategy. 80% of this fan base wants the Flyers to lose. They have to be better, and that's on Danny Briere. They have to get better each year, and if they don't, it's on this front office, not the coach, not the front office. It's still on the front office. Yeah, I mean, it's the front office job to give the coach and the ingredients, the right ingredients to go out there and be successful. Timpo said Hextall set this franchise back several years with not only a half-butt rebuild, but horrible drafts. He drafted some good players, and they got some players, but he didn't see his plan all the way through, and he made some mistakes. I mean, obviously the Nolan Patrick one is a huge mistake in hindsight. Sam Moran, I think, played 25 NHL games and just never seemed to really look like he was ticketed for that beyond when he was drafted. So look, it's a tough situation. Chuck Fletcher made some mistakes in there. Ron Hextall signed Andrew McDonald to that contract. There's mistakes in there for sure. Jason tweets in and says, how is it case in point? Literally, San Jose got a first overall pick last year. The Hawks the year prior with Connor Bedard. And then the Hawks get a second pick and now a third while San Jose gets a second. They're actually getting their core via tanking. Flyers fans, they say they hate tanking. But what have the Flyers done since 1975 that's worked? Well, prior to 2012, Jason, I'm just going to give you a little history lesson. The Flyers had the 3rd highest winning percentage from the time they came into the league to 2012. So they did a lot right. They won a lot. They went to 6 cup finals, more than any other team since they won the cup in 75. Now, when they won the back-to-back cups, 74 and 75. 76, they went back to a cup final. They lost to Montreal, who turned out to be a dynasty team and who won 4 straight cups, Montreal. Then in 1980, the Flyers went back to the cup final, and they took on the next dynasty, which was the New York Islanders, who won 4 straight Stanley Cups. One of the greatest teams with Mike Bossy, Trottier, Potvin, Billy Smith, on down the line. They went back to the cup final in 85 and 87 against Edmonton, the greatest teams ever in the history of the NHL, with Gretzky, Messier, Curry, on down the line. They lost to them in 85 and 87. They went back to the cup in 97 and took on Detroit, who won 3 cups in 6 years. Close enough to a dynasty with Lidstrom, and we know those teams. Great teams. And then obviously they went back to the cup in 2010, and they lost to the dynasty of the Chicago Blackhawks, Kane Taves, Seabrook, Duncan Keith, who won 3 cups in 5 years. They also went to 9 conference championships since they won the Cup in 75. So they did a lot that worked. But the point is, they haven't done a lot that's worked since 2012. Let's just brush with a factual brush and not the broad brush because it fits the narrative. They have been a very good organization from their inception to 2012. Last 13 years, they haven't. There's been flux in upper management, representation of ownership, all of those things. And that's part of it, I believe. So that's the fact of the matter, Jason. People having a meltdown, says Julian, over the 6th and 4th. I get it. Seems fishy. 2 teams, not one move that is that far. It's insane. Teams should not allow in the lottery that barely missed the playoffs. But the Flyers have 10 picks, and more important, they need to make moves in free agency. Again, I don't think free agency is this summer. He said, Jason, I agree. It's enough they didn't rebuild right and forget it now. Time to get serious. One thing that this front office is still doing is they got to stop re-signing their own players. You got to cut the cord. They did that. They've cut the cord with a lot of guys, whether that was Kevin Hayes or Ivan Provorov. There's been a lot of guys they've cut the cord with. Flyers have a bunch of nice players in the minors, but they're prospects. He said they're prospects, just don't know. Here's the thing, and it's fact. If they fired Tortsway earlier, and if the PP was even average, they would make the playoffs. I don't know that to be true. I don't know if I agree with that. Goaltending was just undermined them so much. And Bodine says, I understand you don't want to go through it again, but the way they have decided to go will doom them to perpetual mediocrity. Again, I'll go back to all the teams that I mentioned that won the Cups that didn't do it by tanking. This notion just is not based in friggin' fact. He said this team needs to draft elite talent, and elite talent is more likely at the top of draft. That's a fact. All right. How come the numbers don't bear that out? Because they don't. They don't bear that out. I replied to this guy. I said the sample size in the last 25 years doesn't bear out in the results. Did you listen to the results since 2000? Yeah, a couple of teams that have drafted multiple times in top 5 won Cups. A lot haven't. It's just the fact of the matter. It is the fact of the matter. These things aren't up for interpretation. I'm giving you the exact who they drafted when they drafted them. Some of these teams drafted in the top 5 and traded the picks, for goodness sake, which tells you that in a draft that's not stocked at the high end, like this one is not this season, you're not going to land that cornerstone player. I mean, in the 2017 draft, all the cornerstone players, Heischer's that guy. He's a captain, Devils, taking number 1 overall. But when you look at, they were all taken outside the top 2 picks. You look at a guy like Heiskanen, Elias Pettersson, or obviously Makar, who's taken 4th. Last one comes from S. Migo. He says, the Flyers suck. I don't think people should try and convince themselves they are close. Constant mistakes, terrible drafts and trades, no direction. Okay, I don't hear anybody convincing themselves that they're close. So again, don't make up fake BS to fit your narrative. You don't like the Flyers. That's cool. And they haven't been good. They haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. But nobody's convincing themselves that they're close. You sound like a friggin' idiot when you say Flyer fans evaluate their team and think they're close. What world do you live in? I don't see that day to day. I'm in this thing every day, all day, every day. I don't see a single person saying they're close. So you, sir, are the fool. And that's how we wrap up the week. Everybody, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday with Bill Meltzer. So enjoy Mother's Day, all the moms, and we'll talk to you next time on a brand new Flyers Daily.